that I had done it. So the book should be dedicated to my father.
Gentleman right here.
It seems like as through the years as I've grown up that all the teachers I didn't like kind of dismissed your writings as being just part of science fiction, and it wasn't important and it wasn't literature. And all of my favorite teachers were the ones that would present your short stories first as some of the best examples of literature ever written. I want to know maybe what you think that, because I read a lot of your contemporaries such as Asimov and Clarke, but I never read them in school. What makes your short story, what do you feel makes your short stories so well to the educational system?
What is it that causes your stories more than other authors to be read in schools?
Because I'm an old-fashioned storyteller, and I write about metaphors, and it's very easy for you, when you put one of my stories down, to remember what the hell it said. There's so much fiction being written today that are a slice of life and don't seem to go anywhere. But my stories are related to my experiences with Herman Melville, with Edgar Allan Poe, with Nathaniel Hawthorne, to Rudyard Kipling, to Charles Dickens, the storytellers, good solid stuff. And when you put down a Rudyard Kipling story or something by Dickens, by God, you can remember the effect of the Christmas Carol on me when I was a child has been lasting all of my life. And I always hoped one day to write a book like the Christmas Carol, and the nearest thing I've done to it is the Halloween tree. Yeah.
Take the gentleman over here, and no one else get in line because we won't even have time for all these people. Sorry.
I was wondering, your books are a lot about the ideas of sci-fi, the fantasy of it, and what do you think about the nuts and bolts sci-fi like Clarke or Asimov that have light years and distances? Which do you think is more important, the idea or the reality of it? And can you tell me your thoughts on that?
How do you feel about science fiction that is more involved with the nuts and bolts and sciences and high tech? And do you think it's more important to have science fiction about ideas or about, I'm going to guess the answer here is the ideas, than about the high tech parts of it?
You must be careful not to write high-tech stories because they go out of fashion. New inventions are invented, so the story becomes dated. But if you write myths, I write fantasies. I don't write science fiction. I've only written one science fiction story, that's Fahrenheit 451. But Martian Chronicles was caused to be born in me by Edgar Rice Burroughs when I was a child. So the first thing I wrote when I was 12 was a sequel to the novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs. So the Martian Chronicles is a myth, a fantasy, but its father is Burroughs.
Hi, it's truly an honor. You're absolutely my favorite writer and have been such a great influence on me, just probably as much as the writers you've just mentioned. This isn't really a question, but I just wanted to, I don't know if you knew this or not, but my uncle's on the library board in Kansas City, and they've just done a new downtown library that's gorgeous, and the parking structure is about 4 stories high, and they put around it like humongous, the 20 most influential American writers, and one of them is Fahrenheit 451.
Library, 20 most influential writers. They put up a placard about them, and you're up there on a library.
It's not a placard, it's actually a humongous 4-story book.
It's a 4-story book. But you're probably not getting royalties. What is, when people come up to you and ask you, say, my favorite book is Martian Chronicles, my favorite book is something wicked, which is the book they mention the most often to you?
It's equal between Something Wicked and Dandelion Wine and Martian Chronicles.
Did you ever write anything that nobody ever mentions that you wish they did? Was there some book? I had dinner once with Jimmy Stewart, and he was complaining that people never mentioned certain movies of his. They always mentioned It's a Wonderful Life and Philadelphia Story. Nobody ever mentioned Speed, which is a film he liked. Do you have a favorite story that was neglected?
I can't really say. No, the praise is measured out over 4 or 5 books.
All right. Over here.
I just want to say that 34 years ago I lived in San Diego, and I had the pleasure of seeing you at the 1970 con in the basement of the El Cortez Hotel. You had to be driven down from LA because you didn't fly, and you signed an autograph for me as with your name and Apollo Year 2, because it was the year after Armstrong walked on the moon. And that made a huge impression upon me, and I want to thank you.
She said 1970s. Huge impression on her. I think that was at one of the first San Diego conventions. She was just thanking you.
That's right, yes.
Over here, in the tiara.
Thank you. Yes, it's a great honor, and I'm very glad that you'll give me a few moments to ask a question you've probably been asked a million times before. But I'm an aspiring writer. I spend all of my free time doing it. There's hundreds and hundreds of pages of writing on the floor of my bedroom right now. And beside the usual things that you hear from everyone, just persistence and practice, what would you advise for people who do want to be writers for a living? Because I love writing with a passion I think is unnatural and unhealthy, and I would really love to do it for the rest of my life if I could.
You've probably never been asked this before. But what advice would you give? She's an aspiring writer. There may be 1 or 2 more out here. What advice do you give to someone besides just persistence?
No. Fall in love and stay in love. What is it that you love? Do you love science fiction? Write it. Do you love fantasy? Write it. Do you love mysteries, detective stories? Write it. Do you love romances? For God's sakes, write it. Your passion must instruct you. Do not look left or right. Don't try to please anyone. Don't stay away from politics. All the political writers in France that were famous 50 years ago and 70 years ago and 100 years ago today are dead. Their ideas are dead. They're gone. They were political. They thought they knew what they were writing about. The only thing you can warn people about is bad politics. But to write with passion about things that frighten you, that delight you, and the wonder of being alive, that's stuff to write about. And if you do that, nothing will stop you. You'll go right to the top. It'll take forever. It'll take forever. There's no money for writers for a long time when you begin. And it took me many years before I made more than $15 a week. When I married my wife 57 years ago, she took a vow of poverty to marry me. I had only $8 in the bank the day I got married. I put $5 in an envelope and I handed it to the minister. He said, "What's this?" I said, "That's your fee for the marriage ceremony today." He said, "You're a writer, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Then you're going to need this." He handed it to me. I took it back. So my wife worked for 3 years to support me while I wrote what turned out to be the Martian Chronicles. So God bless my wife for that.
I'm afraid we're out of time. Will you join me in thanking Mr. Ray Bradbury?
That's so good. science fiction writer.